With.
Exactly. Okay. Have a good day tomorrow, everyone. From Moments here, Channel 2.
Stay tuned now for Nightline. Have a good night.
Pan Am Flight 103. 3 years later, Washington names the culprits.
We charge that 2 Libyan officials planted and detonated the bomb that destroyed Pan Am Flight 103.
But today, new evidence that the case against the 2 Libyans is flawed, and new questions over whether the 2 men being sought are the wrong men.
This is ABC News Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from Washington, Chris Wallace.
Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi meets with Egyptian President Mubarak tomorrow, trying to find some way out of his latest crisis. Libya's air links to the rest of the world were cut off by UN sanctions last week, and the international community has made it clear it will keep increasing the pressure until Gaddafi turns over those 2 Libyans who were indicted in the Pan Am 103 bombing. But as the confrontation heightens, there's new evidence that Libya may not be involved, or at least is not the key player. Time magazine, in the issue out today, cites a 1989 FBI memo that seems to strike at the heart of the U.S. government's case. The memo says there's no proof that a Libyan suitcase was ever loaded on board the Pan Am flight. Without that link, it would be hard to prosecute the government's case against the Libyans and hard to justify the international sanctions against Gaddafi, which may explain why Assistant Attorney General Robert Mueller knocked down the Times story hard, calling it a stale rehash of innuendo, speculation, and surmise, and stating that the Libyans were indicted on the evidence. Just how strong is the government's case? Nightline's Dave Marish takes a look.
Muammar Gaddafi may rage. His citizens may demonstrate in the streets of Tripoli. But Libya stands today isolated, its diplomats restricted, its air links cut by order of the United Nations Security Council because Libya refuses to turn over Abdel Basset al-Megrahi and Lamin Fima, the accused bombers of Pan Am 103.
We charge that 2 Libyan officials, acting as operatives of the Libyan intelligence service, along with other co-conspirators, planted and detonated the bomb that destroyed Pan Am Flight 103.
270 people died as a result of that bombing, 259 on the plane, 11 on the ground at Lockerbie, Scotland. The multinational attempt to find out who was responsible has been called the biggest criminal investigation of the 20th century. Its climax came last November 14th, when American and British officials accused al-Megrahi and Fima.
A demand is being made to Libya for the surrender of those men for trial.
The charges against the Libyans caught many investigators and journalists by surprise, since until last November, the focus of suspicion had been on Ahmed Jibril and his Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command.
The Scottish police find it extraordinary. They are incandescent with anger about why no explanation has been given as to this change.
Scottish parliamentarian Tam Dial says his sources in Scottish law enforcement doubt that al-Megrahi and Fima deserve to be the bullseyes of this investigation.
Those people by themselves could not have devised the most major crime against civilians in the Western world since 1945.
The case against the Libyans says they put a suitcase containing the bomb on Air Malta Flight 180 and sent it from Malta to Frankfurt, where it was then put on board Pan Am 103 to London. In a letter, Scottish Lord Advocate Fraser's assistant wrote to the lawyer for families of the victims of the bombing, quote, proof of criminal responsibility is inextricably linked with the Air Malta flight. But will computerized records from Frankfurt Airport's baggage system prove a bag made that Air Malta to Pan Am connection? Prosecutors say yes, but a cover story in this week's Time magazine reveals a key document that suggests the proof isn't there.
It's an FBI teletype that was sent from Bonn in October 1989, which indicates or reveals quite clearly that the FBI investigator realized that there may not have been any bag from the Air Malta flight that made it to Pan Am.
FBI Special Agent Lawrence Whitaker concludes that it is no more than possible that such a connection was made, and then adds another startling possibility, quote, that a piece of luggage was simply introduced at coding station 206. Whitaker says while he and a Scottish investigator were observing that Frankfurt coding station, they saw a baggage handler take an unidentified piece of luggage past the checkpoint and then send it on its way to a transatlantic flight. This incident, the FBI report states, quote, may provide insight into the possibilities of a rogue bag being inserted into the baggage system. Another visitor to Pan Am's Frankfurt baggage operation thinks he's uncovered who put the bag with a bomb inside it on board Pan Am 103. Private investigator Javal Aviv had lie detector tests administered to Pan Am baggage handler Kilin Tusku and loadmaster Roland O'Neill.
Tusku had 3 tests, and O'Neill had 2 tests. They failed on all 5 tests. The questions that they failed on mostly was, did you switch a suitcase? Did you know what's in a suitcase?
Aviv and Pan Am's insurer's lawyer James M. Shaughnessy then lured Tusku and O'Neill to London for further questioning by British police. But as Shaughnessy wrote in a statement to the police, quote, Superintendent Gilchrist advised me that he would not speak with either O'Neill or Tusku that evening.
Shaughnessy reminded them that it was all prearranged. They refused to acknowledge that and advised us in a very polite way, send them back. The 2 gentlemen were put back on a plane, arrived in Germany, took a cab and went home.
American prosecutors have shown little interest in anyone at Frankfurt Airport, including Tusku and O'Neill. Instead, says one of the men charged with prosecuting the Libyans, he is depending on
just 2 pieces of evidence, critical evidence, irrefutable evidence, that leads directly to the 2 Libyans who were indicted today.
The key piece of evidence, says Mueller, is
the timer that was used in this particular disaster.
Scottish investigators say proof the timer on the Pan Am bomb was put there by the Libyans is less than conclusive. And Scott Malone, investigative reporter for PBS's Frontline, says this evidence poses some serious problems for the prosecutors.
The transistor computer chip was found some 2 years after the fact out in the field somewhere. It could have been planted. Questions could be raised as to where it came from or how it was found.
Mueller's second piece of irrefutable evidence is made up of bits of badly burned fabric.
Particularly clothes that were taken or were determined by blast damage to be in the suitcase with the bomb that are traced directly to a particular Libyan.
But that letter from Lord Advocate Fraser's assistant says, quote, the scientific evidence will not of itself establish the origin of all damaged clothing. If Lord Fraser's apprehension is correct, and the clothing can't be tied to a particular terrorist, and the timer's origin can't be definitively determined, and how the bag with the bomb got on board can't be factually proved, prosecuting the terrorists will be a losing game. For all that, the American Justice Department says it'll play with the cards it's been dealt and win. I'm Dave Marish for Nightline in New York.
Nightline extended invitations to representatives of the State Department, the Justice Department, and the FBI to appear on tonight's program, but they all declined. When we come back, we'll be joined by a spokesman for relatives of victims of Flight 103 and by 2 of our ABC News colleagues who have been following the twists and turns of this story.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by UPS.
These extinct relics of American business remind us that waste and inefficiency don't pay. And that while perhaps it used to be impressive to throw money around, today it's more impressive not to. A timely reminder from the only company that guarantees 10:30 overnight delivery for up to 40% less. UPS.
This is regular. This is better. This Bayer is regular. For headaches, Anacin is better. Why better? Regular Bayer has 1 ingredient. Anacin has 2. A pain medicine plus a second ingredient that makes it work better. Get Anacin. Get better.
Introducing the new Ford Taurus and the ear. Its new design pleases the eye, but to please the ear, we quieted the engine, the interior, even the air conditioning. So now the idea of driving one will sound even better.
Tony Meeker cares about Oregon veterans. He cares about Oregon families. He cares about all of us.
5 years ago, Oregon's veteran home loan program was $600 million in debt. Loans stuck, and taxpayers faced millions in higher taxes. But thanks to a strong state treasurer, all that's changed. Tony Meeker put the loan program back in the black, and today veterans and their families can once again get loans, all without higher taxes.
Join me in voting for Tony Meeker for Congress.
It's Sunday, and you have stuff to do around the house. So you go to Home Club to get a few things, but something seems different. They still have everything you need. They still have friendly salespeople and great low prices. But something's definitely changed. And then it hits you. They never used to give out balloons. Home Club is now home base. It's that simple.
Win a $10,000 home base shopping spree or get up to a 50% discount in the home base scratch and win sweepstakes.
Teen first offenders face a real jury of their peers.
Would you say he's intoxicated?
Does it work? You be the judge. Peter Jennings on ABC's World News Tonight, tomorrow.
Bert Ammerman knows firsthand the grief of Flight 103. He lost his brother Tom in the bombing, and now is a spokesman for a group of relatives called Victims of Pan Am 103. Mr. Ammerman joins us from our New York studios. Also in New York is Nightline correspondent Dave Marish, who has been reporting on this story for years. Pierre Salinger, chief foreign correspondent for ABC News, returned from Libya this morning. He has followed the story of Flight 103 since its beginnings, and he joins us now from our London bureau. Mr. Ammerman, obviously no one cares more about solving this mystery about who was responsible for Flight 103 than the relatives of the victims, people like yourself. Are you persuaded by the Time article that Libya was not involved?
Well, Chris, I'll tell you that when I heard this article was coming out, I looked forward with great anticipation because of the prestige and credibility that a magazine like Time magazine has. I have to tell you that I'm very disappointed in it's like an embarrassing article. This is recycled old news that's taken place.
Well, specifically, without getting into time, let's talk about the evidence. Aren't you persuaded at all by this new FBI memo, which seems to indicate that there's no positive proof that Libyan suitcase was ever loaded on board the plane?
Absolutely not. This memo could be taken out of context. On November 14th, the investigators in Scotland and in the United States delivered us state-sponsored terrorism, the implication of the government of Libya and these two agents. I think that a trial should take place. The UN is acting appropriately. Mr. Aviv was discredited. He keeps maintaining that he worked for Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency. That is now found out to be not true, that he at best worked in El Al in a very low-level position. The investigators, both FBI agents and Scottish investigators that I've gotten to know over the last 3 years, on separate occasions in the last 3 weeks, say there's more than enough evidence to convict these individuals either in an American court or in a Scottish court, and they look forward to the trial. So we're very confident with what's taken place.
Pierre Salinger, as we've noted, you've been working this story for years. How strong do you think the Libyan connection is?
Well, I don't want to get into a confrontation with a member of a family that lost somebody on Pan Am 103, but I want to say that I don't totally agree with what has just been said. I think the Libyan connection is very, very weak. And the fact is that the day the indictment was done on the 14th of November, the Maltese government put out a statement saying that no unaccompanied bag was put on the Air Malta flight. And the reason they said that was that they had been told by the Scottish police at the end of 1989 that a full check had been done on every bag on the Air Malta flight, and they had identified every bag, and there had been no unaccompanied bag. Now, that story did not get any attention at the time, but it's a critical piece of information about how the Maltese government sees the situation. Now, I am the one who has interviewed these two men. And I must say that McGrahy is a highly intelligent person and a person capable of participating in a terrorist act. But my own judgment is that if he was involved, he was not involved under direction of the Libyan government, but part of a wider spectrum, including the PFLP-GC of Ahmed Jabril, who I still think is the mastermind of the Pan Am 103 bombing. And even though there are many things in the Time magazine article that I am not totally in accord with. I think that the basic point is that the bomb was put on the plane in Frankfurt, Germany, and not in Malta. And therefore, the UN sanctions which are being imposed on Libya right now may be imposed in a situation where the final proof is not sufficient to show that they did it.
Pierre, I want to pick up on this question of the U.S. and UN sanctions against Libya in a moment, but let me bring in Dave Marish at this point. And Dave, I want to talk about the point that you ended your story with just a few moments ago. If there is no conclusive proof that the Libyan suitcase was ever put on the Pan Am flight, if there are questions about the Libyan link to the timer and that burnt clothing that was found in Lockerbie, how could the U.S. ever convict these two Libyans if Gaddafi were to turn them over?
Well, according to the former head of counterterrorism at the CIA, Vincent Canestraro, there is a significant ace in the hole on the prosecution side, and that is a former member of Libyan intelligence who has defected and is currently a protected witness in the United States and who is expected to testify that Libyan intelligence was involved and perhaps was even the guiding hand in this. Now, how credible a witness he'll prove on a witness stand is another question. And it seems to me what our story to date demonstrates and what time demonstrated is the worlds of difference between intelligence and evidence, or the difference between what you, quote, know and what you can prove. Unfortunately, and I really feel for Bert Ammerman here because I think the Time story gave him a double disappointment. One, I think it indicated that prosecution will be more difficult than we had been led to believe. But I think the point is that a lot of the intelligence, a lot of the intercepts, a lot of the information that the U.S. government has in its possession about this simply cannot be used in order to protect sources and methods, and also simply doesn't hold up as evidence in a courtroom. And that's, I think, going to be a very important distinction in the unlikely event that al-Megrahi and FEMA are ever brought to trial in the United States or the United Kingdom.
Let me break in here just for a moment if I can, and when we return, I want to ask you all about charges which you've all alluded to in some sense, that the U.S. is pinning this on Libya and is ignoring evidence against Syria and Iran for diplomatic purposes. And we'll continue our discussion in a moment.
A car is a car. It won't make you handsome or prettier or younger, and if it improves your standing with the neighbors, then you live among snobs. A car is steel, electronics, rubber, plastic, and glass. A machine. And in the end, may the best machine win. Subaru. What to drive.
Everyone has a dream, a vision deep inside.
With all the mutual funds out there, I needed an easy way to help me compare them.
We make it easier to follow your own lead.
With Schwab's free mutual funds performance guide, I can compare track records on over 500 funds.
Always there to give you just the help you need.
Help yourself at Schwab today.
While in Washington, Congressman Les Aucoin supported the B-2 bomber, took thousands from defense contractors, voted himself a huge pay raise, and bounced 80 checks for over $60,000. After 17 years in Washington, look at him now.
So if you're frustrated with Washington, believe me, so am I. But now we have a chance for real change.
That's right, Congressman. Real change. Harry Lonsdale, one less career politician in the U.S. Senate.
So, what would you expect from a gas grill made by Weber?
Everything. Genesis, the Weber of gas grills.
If you don't have GTE MobileNet cellular service, your company could be missing a valuable competitive advantage. Discover the exclusive Follow Me roaming service with calls forwarded to you throughout the U.S. and Canada. And for peace of mind, Mr. Rescue 24-hour emergency road service is free of charge to all GTE MobileNet customers. Visit CR Cellular Communications, your authorized GTE MobileNet agent. When you purchase any Nokia phone, the activation fee and $100 in airtime coupons are yours free. Call CR Cellular today.
He's virtually turned my husband's whole family against me.
Her marriage is being torn apart by his children. A mother's heartbreak when an angry stepchild is destroying her family. Next on A Hugh.
Tuesday at 3 on Channel 2.
It's us and them. Always thought you were getting ripped off by appliance repairmen? Now Hidden Cameras and Chris Wallace prove it. A primetime investigation Thursday.
Continuing our conversation now about the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103, Mr. Ammerman, some of the families of victims of the flight have charged that the U.S. government is ignoring evidence against Iran and Syria because it doesn't want to damage relations with those countries now. Do you have some feeling that the Bush administration is playing international politics in the crime of this dimension?
We met last June with Deputy Secretary Eagleberger in a very frank discussion, told him that our government has to start acting on principles in foreign policy and not have such shortcomings of trying to deal with opportunities. You don't deal with the Hirohito and the Hitler of the 90s, which is Mr. Assad from Syria. It's amazing that President Bush would say the Syrians took a bum rap on this. I agree with Dave that there's a big difference between intelligence information versus evidence. The evidence of the investigators that did a phenomenal job takes them to the doorsteps of Libya. Autumn leaves that took place in October 1988 was not an illusion. That was the PFLP-GC. That was Jibril, who was given protection by Assad today. Assad has been responsible for state-sponsored terrorism for over 20 years, and it's sort of ironic that the first country that wants to break the economic sanctions against Libya is Syria. Maybe the President and Secretary Baker will finally realize we should start to develop foreign policy based on principles to protect the interests of American citizens based on opportunities.
Pierre, let me bring you in at this point, because clearly whatever the Libyan role was or wasn't, there is an awful lot of evidence that has been developed against Syria, against Iran, against Ahmed Jibril. How do U.S. and British investigators justify their position now that this was a Libyan operation from start to finish?
Well, if you talk to U.S. and British investigators, they tell you that they're continuing the investigation. They haven't ruled out the possibility of a Syrian connection or an Iranian connection, but they have focused on Libya. I think that one of the things, and it's very hard to come to any proof about it, but I think that the Gulf War probably played a role in this situation. The fact that Syria became an ally of the United States in the coalition against Iraq, the fact that the United States wants to improve relations with Iran. Libya is a different target. It's an easier target for the United States, and that is why we've gone in that direction. Now, a very interesting point that was just made is Syria's statement that they don't want to break the sanctions and that they want to do the flying. And the fact that Assad is traveling all over the Gulf area and so on, information that we're getting is the Syrians are getting very, very concerned that new information which is popping up is going to change the focus in the United States on Syria. They're trying to appear to be great friends of Libya in order to prevent that from happening because they know the Libyans have information on the Pan Am 103 case, and that is something the Libyans don't want to talk about publicly because they don't want to attack an Arab neighbor. But that they have information which links Syria to the Pan Am 103 crash.
Pierre, whether they're being accused rightly or wrongly, Libya is now taking on the rest of the world with these UN sanctions. You are just back from Tripoli. Is the Gaddafi regime worried about this situation?
Yes, the Gaddafi regime is quite worried. I've talked to very high-level people in the government. They would like to arrive at some kind of a solution. They would like to create a dialogue.
What is that solution? I mean, first of all, are they willing to turn over these two men under any conditions?
They are willing to turn over the two men. Let me just give you the Libyan position, because I think that has to be understood. They're not against the idea of a trial in the United States or the UK as a fundamental thing, but they believe that, for example, all the information that's been put through the press in the United States and Great Britain about Libyan connection will affect the jury and therefore make it difficult for the jury to come to an innocent verdict. So they're concerned about putting them over. Now, the second thing is that the United States has actually expanded the situation in the sanctions which were imposed. What they said was, we won't stop the sanctions if you turn over these two men. We have to deal also with the problem of terrorism. Well, I know that the Libyans are willing to discuss the subject of terrorism with other nations, but the fact is, with this thing, they're likely not to turn them over unless they have a much wider solution in some kind of discussion.
Mr. Ammerman, you know, these are all interesting theories for us, but for you, it's a question of trying to find out who was responsible for the murder of your brother. What does it do to you when one day you're hearing U.S. government investigators talking about it's the Syrians, it's the Iranians, and the next day they're indicting the Libyans? What does this roller coaster mean for you?
Well, first of all, Chris, the investigation, for all intents and purposes, is over. There's only a skeleton force in the FBI. I was down there last week, and there's only a skeleton force over in Scotland. So for all intents and purposes, all the energies have turned to Libya and the investigation that dealt with that. What's so important here is that beyond our wildest dreams, on November 14th of last year, an indictment with specific names in a country was named. I don't think that we should be trying this case in the media at this particular point. I think Mr. Salinger did a fabulous job 2 years ago when he put his scenario together. We've seen 5 or 6 other different scenarios, and I think Dave hit on the key message here. Are we dealing with intelligence or evidence? Our government and the United Kingdom government and the West German government tried to put it in the criminal arena. For 3 years, we said it never belonged in the criminal arena. This was a political act. It was an attack on the American flag. Finally, on November 14th, we got it in the political arena with state-sponsored terrorism against Libya. Let's keep it in the political arena. If we can bring these individuals to trial, I think another scenario that hasn't been mentioned yet on this show is that Gaddafi could be very concerned if these 2 individuals are turned over. They might implicate him, which is him being involved in this himself, which is truly state-sponsored terrorism. There's a long way to go on this, but we must have the resolve, and we must implement an oil embargo with a naval blockade by the middle of August. That will turn the individuals over.
Mr. Ammerman, Dave Marish, Pierre Salinger, I want to thank you all very much for joining us tonight. We're going to have to leave it there, and we'll be back in a moment.
You can count on Sears Brand Central for all the brand name electronics and appliances you want. No wonder more people buy more top name brands from the store they trust. Right now, count on a Eureka Boss or a Kenmore Upright, both with 6.5 amp motors. Your choice, just $89.88. Or this GE dishwasher with pot scrubber and light wash cycles, just $299.99. Only at Sears Brand Central.
AT&T has sized up small businesses and found they come in many sizes. To fit them, we've created the AT&T Partners in Business Plan. The plan that gives you a choice. Make a list of the 20 people your business calls most. For everyone that's an AT&T customer, you'll get a 20% discount. Or here's another choice that makes this plan unique. If your calling patterns change month to month, you can get a 20% discount on the area code you call most, automatically. AT&T Partners in Business. More choices, because one size does not fit all. Call us.
Over the last 2 years,
The winner is Maxima.
Nissan has won more major awards than any other brand,
The award goes to Pathfinder.
which is great for Nissan, but not so great for the guy who has to pick up the awards.
Nissan wins.
To celebrate, Nissan is offering huge factory-to-dealer incentives on Sentra and up to $1,300 on trucks at our award-winning event. Better hurry, though, because while the award-winning never ends, the event, unfortunately, does.
A popular anti-smoking device, but does it really work?